share with you guys my 10 mindful eating tips, tricks, things that I do, a practice that I have that I always use around the holidays, when I go on vacation, when I go out to eat, really all the time at home, but especially around kind of those out of the norm situations like we're going to be heading into right now because we're heading into holiday season, but you can use this anytime. And the cool thing about it is you can truly, if you choose to, eat anything you want and practice these tips. And it's going to help you feel more in control, more empowered when it comes to being around food and drinks. If sometimes you feel a little bit like anxious or out of control, help you stay on track with your health and weight loss goals, and help you feel better before, during, and after the eating experience. So if you are interested in learning more on these tips or seeing them written out, head to the link in my bio where you can get to my blog, and I have a blog post that outlines all 10 of these tips in detail. So you can just bookmark that and then you can go back to it anytime that you want more information. So if you're new here, my name is Elena. I'm the owner of Elena Nicole Health. I'm a certified health and life coach, and I've also lost over 35 pounds and kept it off for over 8 years. And now I help other people do the same and create a consistent, healthy lifestyle. So let's get into the 10 tips. Okay, mindful eating tip number 1. The thing we always have to start off with is a decision. We have to decide that we want to start paying attention and becoming aware of the food that we are putting in our mouth. We're going to be present, that we are going to be aware by paying attention of the food that is going into our mouth and question if we want it there. And of course, if we want to change any behavior, any action, it really starts with our identity. We have to decide that we want to become a mindful eater. So that is the first step. The second mindful eating tip, and this is really the key, the root to mindful eating as a whole, is if it passes your lips, we have to question it. So again, going back to paying attention to the food that goes into our mouth and questioning if we want it there. And I like to use 4 mindful eating questions every time that I'm going to eat, eating, or about to eat. And these questions help to break us sometimes out of that autopilot where we get into a situation and we just find ourselves eating and like we don't even realize we're doing it. Sometimes we're not even really tasting the food. And then sometimes we catch ourselves either in the act or afterwards when we're feeling like uncomfortably stuffed. I always give the example, if you go to a Mexican restaurant and they give you a bowl of chips and salsa or queso or guac, and like you're just eating and talking and drinking and laughing, and all of a sudden 3 bowls of chips are gone and you're like, what did I even just do? Like you have no idea because your mind was not present because you were mindless eating. So the 4 questions that I always love to ask are, number 1, what am I eating or what am I about to eat? Number 2 is, why am I eating this? Number 3, do I like my reason? And number 4, does it align with my goals and what I want most, and not just in this moment? So making a practice of asking yourself those 4 mindful eating questions every time you are finding yourself about to eat or eating. Number 3, coming up with your own reasons that you either want to be eating or you don't want to be eating. I like to call them food rules. If that sounds a little bit harsh or boring or awful, you don't have to call them for food rules, whatever works for you. And I have decided reasons, rules that I like to eat, and then ones that I don't. For me, I encourage you to think of them for yourself, write them down, or just think of them in your head, whatever works. For me, the reasons I like to eat is either for fuel. Basically, I am fueling my body with nutrients, minerals, all the things that I literally need to survive and thrive, or a rare, exceptional food experience is what I call it. And what that looks like is maybe I'm going on vacation, maybe I'm going to a food tasting event, maybe it's a holiday, something that I've intentionally decided to eat foods that maybe aren't on my plan, aren't the foods that are like the healthiest for my body, but I've intentionally decided, made an active choice to have those. Reasons that I do not like to eat are for emotional reasons, like I'm really sad or upset and I'm eating to like stuff down my feelings. I don't really prefer to do that mindlessly when I am not paying attention and don't even realize that I'm eating and it's not even tasting good, just because other people are or because there's food there. For example, like you're at the movies, everyone's eating popcorn. You really don't even love the popcorn, but well, I'm at the movies, everybody's eating popcorn, so I'll just eat it too. Those are the reasons that I choose that I don't really like to eating. So when we go back to the mindful eating tip that I gave before, it's a whole lot easier when we ask ourselves, why am I eating and do I like my reason, to determine, do I like it or not? Because we have already decided why we want to be eating and why we don't want to be eating. Number 4 is love it, need it, or leave it. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but it basically means if you are not loving it, it is not totally worth it, an amazing food, and you don't need it, meaning it doesn't fuel your body, it's not providing you with sustenance, what food is actually supposed to do, why in the world are we actually eating it? Like really questioning that. If it's not amazing and it's not fuel for your body, like why are we putting it in our mouth? I hear people say all the time, like, well, it's a cookie, well, it's a donut. And it's like, but if it's not a good one, eating tip number 5, we eat when we're hungry and we stop when before that we're full. Sometimes on holidays or in certain situations, we may not always be super hungry when we're eating, but maybe it is actually time to eat. And on holidays, it kind of makes sense that we're going to eat with everyone else. So we're going to focus on the second part of this, is stopping before we are full. So many times, if we are not paying attention, it's really easy to overstuff ourselves because we're not checking in with our body and like making sure we want to keep eating. So that's what's really, really key here, is slowing down and checking in with your body, eating slow enough that your body is actually able to digest and send the signals to your brain like, okay, we're full here, and paying attention to those signals and stop eating when we start to feel that way. Stopping when we're content, when the food is good, we have tasted what we wanted to, but our brain, because the dopamine hit, is wanting more and more and more, catching that and realizing that we don't have to keep eating it just because that temptation is there. Temptation does not have to equal action. You do that, you are flexing that mental muscle and getting stronger and building that habit and skill of not overeating and stopping before you are full. Eating tip number 6 is plating your food before your first bite. Basically, this is not eating out of the serving bowl, the dish, or the bag. It's literally taking whatever you have, a napkin, your hand, a plate, anything, and intentionally deciding with your brain and not your hands, what do you actually want to eat? You can count out the chips or whatever it is. You don't have to. You can literally decide, I want this handful, I want 2 handfuls, whatever it is, put it on the separate dish, and it actually just puts that physical distance and a physical action in between you and that food. So you actually are separating out the amount and eating it, and then you check in again when you're done and decide, do I want to go back for more? Number 7 is eat informed and intentionally. And what this is just simply paying attention when you can to what are the ingredients that are actually in your food and how are they making you feel. Sometimes if you are shopping and you're buying your own food, you can flip over the label, read the ingredients in the label, read what is in your food, and then evaluate afterwards. Did I feel good? Did I not feel so great? And then make an intentional decision going forward based on that. Now, if you're at a holiday party or you're eating out, you can't necessarily do that, but you still generally know what you are consuming. If you're consuming something with a lot of dairy in it, afterwards you have a bad stomach ache. If you're consuming something that's very high sugar, afterwards you have a headache. Start to make that correlation and pay attention. Ignorance is not bliss here. How are we actually feeling after we eat these foods? And make that intentional decision from there. How do we want to eat these foods? And if so, how much and how often? Mindful eating tip number 8, meals have a beginning and an end. And this one simply means like make an intentional decision and decide, when do you want to start eating and when do you want to stop? Sometimes when we're cooking for the holidays, it's like you get in the kitchen, you're snacking all day, you're sampling all the food, you're trying it when it's done. And then it's like, you go to sit down at the table and you don't even want to eat anymore. Sometimes it even happens at a restaurant when you have an appetizer. So I encourage you to think about, when do I actually want to start eating and when do I want to stop, so we can actually enjoy our food and we're not eating so much of it, probably much more than our body actually needs, and we can feel better afterward. Mindful eating tip number 9 is slow down and prioritize eating. This one's really simple. Just focus on slowing down, sitting down when you can, and making eating your actual priority when you're eating. It allows your body to actually tap into the rest and digest, which is where it's supposed to be when we're eating, versus fight or flight. When you're walking around the kitchen, when you are walking around your office, when you're working at the same time, answering phone calls, your body is literally not able to fully digest the foods and assimilate the nutrients that you were consuming, and it's more likely to actually store fat and not burn it. So it is so important for so many reasons that we just decide to slow down for 10, for 15 minutes. The work will still be there, I promise, and try to eat without distractions. It also gives us that time to let our brain know when we are full, when we are actually done eating, when we have had enough. If we are just eating, and doing all the things, sometimes we don't even realize when we actually are content. And it's much harder to stop before being full if we are doing it. Tip number 10 is remember to breathe. This can apply to literally all areas of our life, but especially when it comes to eating. Something I heard forever ago is when you sit down to take like 10 deep breaths before you eat. That might seem like a lot. You don't necessarily have to do that, but also like simple box breathing is something that can actually signal your body, okay, we are going into like rest and digest right now. We are going to chill out and signal your body, I am going to be eating now. And box breathing is just breathing in for 4, holding it for 4, and breathing out slowly for 4. So those were 10 mindful eating tips. Like I said, on my blog at the link in my bio, you can get a full breakdown, much more detail on each one of those, and you can bookmark that page so that you can go back to it whenever you need it.